Here is a beauty routine that modern dermatologists have actually tested in laboratories, published peer-reviewed studies about, and confirmed works better than many commercial products on the market. The twist? This skincare regimen has been practiced for centuries by women who have never set foot in a cosmetic store, never consulted a dermatologist, and live in one of the harshest desert environments on Earth. The Himba women of northern Namibia have been covering their skin and hair daily with a thick red paste called Otjize, made from butterfat and ground ochre, for generations. For years, outsiders assumed this was purely aesthetic, a form of traditional body decoration with no functional purpose beyond looking distinctive. Then, in 2022, a team of South African and French scientists decided to actually test Otjize's physical properties. What they found was remarkable. This traditional paste exhibits exceptional UV filtration, significant infrared reflectivity that reduces skin overheating, and notable antimicrobial effects. The Himba were not just maintaining a cultural tradition, they were practicing sophisticated dermatological science developed through centuries of empirical observation in an environment that demands effective sun protection. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are exploring how a practice that many observers dismissed as primitive superstition turns out to be grounded in solid chemistry and physics. The story of Otjize offers us a perfect case study in the dangers of assuming that traditional knowledge is less sophisticated than modern science, and it challenges us to reconsider what we mean when we talk about beauty practices versus functional skincare. Before we get into the scientific validation of Otjize, it is important to understand who the Himba are and why this particular formulation makes sense in their context. So let us dive into one of those wonderful moments where traditional knowledge and modern science converge, revealing that indigenous communities have been solving complex problems with elegant solutions long before laboratories existed to validate their work. The Himba, also known as the Ova Himba, are a semi-nomadic pastoralist people, numbering approximately 50,000 individuals, primarily inhabiting the Kunene region of northern Namibia, one of the most arid areas in southern Africa. They are a subgroup of the Herero ethnic group and have maintained their traditional way of life with remarkable consistency despite pressures of colonization, modernization, and environmental change. The Himba are cattle herders, measuring wealth primarily through livestock ownership. Their entire social organization revolves around managing herds in an environment characterized by extreme temperatures, scarce water resources, unpredictable rainfall, and intense solar radiation. The region experiences some of the most intense sun exposure on the African continent. Temperatures regularly exceed 40 degrees Celsius, the air is exceptionally dry, water sources are scattered and often seasonal, and there is minimal natural shade. For people spending entire days outdoors managing livestock, the risk of severe sunburn, dehydration, and long-term skin damage is substantial. The Himba developed effective solutions through generations of observation and experimentation. Otjize represents one of those solutions, a carefully formulated paste addressing multiple environmental challenges simultaneously. So, what exactly is Otjize, and how is it made? The base ingredients are remarkably simple: butterfat or animal fat, typically from goats or cattle, combined with red ochre pigment sourced from hematite deposits found in the region. The ochre is obtained by mining specific sites where iron oxide-rich rocks are found, then pounding these rocks into fine powder that can be easily mixed with fat. Some formulations also include aromatic resins from local shrubs, particularly Commiphora multijuga, known locally as Omuzumba, which adds pleasant scent and may contribute additional insect repellent properties. The proportions are roughly equal parts ochre powder and butterfat. creating a paste with creamy consistency that can be applied smoothly to skin and hair. The preparation of Otjize is traditionally women's work, with knowledge passed down from mothers to daughters. The process requires skill. The ochre must be ground fine enough to blend smoothly. The butterfat must be in the right state to mix properly. And the final consistency needs to provide good coverage without becoming difficult to apply. Himba women apply it each morning to the entire body and hair, creating the distinctive reddish-orange appearance that has earned them the nickname Red People of Africa. Now, here is where things get scientifically interesting. For a long time, outside observers offered various theories about why Himba women used Otjize. Some suggested it was purely decorative. Others thought it might provide some sun protection or insect repellent effects, but these were largely speculative explanations. The Himba themselves have been somewhat ambiguous in their descriptions, sometimes emphasizing the aesthetic dimension, saying it is like putting on makeup each morning, while also acknowledging practical benefits. The cultural meaning of Otjize is deep and multifaceted. The red color symbolizes the earth and blood, representing life force and fertility. It connects wearers to their ancestors and the land itself, and it marks important social distinctions, with different hairstyles and application patterns indicating age, marital status, and social position. But in 2022, researchers decided to move beyond speculation and actually test Otjize using modern analytical techniques. A team from South African and French institutions obtained samples of the red ochre used by Himba women and conducted detailed morphological, crystallographic, and optical studies. What they published in scientific reports was striking validation of the paste's effectiveness. The red ochre, they found, is composed primarily of nanoscaled rhombohedral alpha-Fe 203 nanocrystals, essentially hematite at the nanoscale, along with an additional component of gamma-FeOOH, a hydrolyzed iron oxide. These particular mineral structures have exceptional optical properties. The UV filtration capability is the most immediately relevant finding. The Otjize ochre absorbs ultraviolet radiation and a portion of visible light across the 190 to 570 nanometer range, with reflectance below 3% in that spectrum. To put this in context, commercial sunscreens using titanium dioxide or zinc oxide typically have cutoff wavelengths around 380 to 390 nanometers in the UV blue spectral range. Otjize's cutoff wavelength extends into the visible range at around 570 nanometers, meaning it blocks a broader spectrum of potentially harmful radiation than many conventional sunscreens. The study explicitly stated that this exhibits exceptional UV filtration, substantiating its effectiveness as a UV-blocking agent. But the protection goes beyond just UV radiation. The researchers also measured significant infrared reflectivity, finding that the Otjize coating reflects back approximately 53% of solar heat in the infrared region. This is crucial for preventing skin overheating in an environment where ambient temperatures are already extremely high. The paste essentially creates a barrier that keeps some of the sun's heat from being absorbed directly by the skin, helping to regulate body temperature. When you combine the UV blocking with the IR reflectivity and add the butterfat component that creates a moisture-sealing layer on the skin surface, you have a remarkably sophisticated multifunctional skincare product. The antimicrobial properties add another dimension. The same study tested the nanoscaled iron oxide particles for antibacterial activity and found notable response against both E. coli and S. aureus, two common bacterial pathogens. The researchers identified three potential mechanisms: photocatalytic action, where light energy excites the particles to produce oxidative compounds, reactive oxygen species generation, and direct cell surface interaction that disrupts bacterial integrity. The practical implication is that Otjize may help protect skin from bacterial infections, particularly valuable in an environment where minor cuts and abrasions are common, and access to modern medical care is limited. The researchers explicitly connected their findings to health outcomes, noting that these properties support the observed low skin cancer rates among the Himba despite constant sun exposure. This challenges assumptions many hold about traditional practices and health outcomes. The Himba have developed a preventive intervention that appears quite effective. The combination of broad-spectrum UV blocking, heat reflection, moisture retention, and antimicrobial action addresses the major dermatological challenges of their environment in a single formulation. What makes this even more fascinating is that the Himba arrived at this formulation through empirical observation and cultural transmission rather than laboratory analysis. They did not have spectrophotometers to measure UV absorption or electron microscopes to examine nanocrystal structures. They had the evidence of their own experience. This paste, when applied regularly, kept skin healthier and more comfortable in harsh conditions than not applying it. Over generations, the knowledge of how to prepare it properly, which ochre sources produced the best results, what proportions worked well, these details were refined and passed down through the matrilineal knowledge transmission that characterizes Himba society. This raises important questions about how we categorize and value different forms of knowledge. Modern science validated Otjize's effectiveness, but the Himba did not need that validation to know it worked. They had already accumulated centuries of observational evidence demonstrating its benefits. The scientific studies are valuable because they help us understand the mechanisms, the specific chemical and physical properties that produce the observed effects, but the effectiveness itself was never really in doubt among the people who used the product daily. What has changed is not whether Otjize works, but whether outsiders take it seriously. The broader implications extend beyond just this one example. Indigenous communities worldwide have developed sophisticated responses to their specific environmental challenges, from plant-based medicines to architectural designs to agricultural techniques. These solutions often work remarkably well, but they are frequently dismissed or undervalued by people who assume that traditional knowledge is inherently inferior to knowledge produced in laboratories or universities. The Otjize story reminds us that empirical observation, careful experimentation, and accumulated experience can produce knowledge that is just as valid and in some cases more practically effective than what emerges from formal scientific institutions. It is also worth noting how the cultural and functional dimensions of Otjize are not separate but deeply intertwined. The paste provides real dermatological benefits, but it also serves as a marker of identity, a connection to ancestors and land, a symbol of beauty and fertility, and a practice that binds women together across generations through shared knowledge and daily ritual. This integration of practical function and cultural meaning is characteristic of many traditional practices. We often want to separate these dimensions to ask whether something is really for health or really for culture. But that dichotomy may not make sense in contexts where health, culture, spirituality, and aesthetics are understood as interconnected rather than distinct domains. The contemporary situation for the Himba includes both continuity and change. Many Himba women continue to use Otjize daily, maintaining this central element of their cultural practice. However, the community faces pressures from development projects, land disputes, climate change impacts on traditional grazing lands, and the pull of urbanization and wage labor opportunities. Some younger Himba are moving to towns and cities, where the daily application of Otjize may be less practical or socially comfortable. Tourism has brought both economic benefits and challenges, with Himba culture sometimes commodified for visitor consumption. The scientific validation of Otjize has not necessarily changed these dynamics, though it may provide additional arguments for cultural preservation by demonstrating that traditional practices have measurable value. All in all, the story of Otjize challenges us to reconsider our assumptions about the relationship between traditional knowledge and modern science, about beauty practices versus functional skincare, and about who gets to be recognized as having sophisticated understanding of chemistry and physiology. The Himba developed an effective multifunctional dermatological product using locally available materials and knowledge transmission systems that predate formal education by centuries. Modern science has confirmed what they already knew through experience. Properly formulated ochre paste provides excellent sun protection, helps regulate skin temperature, retains moisture, and offers antimicrobial benefits. This is not a case of science discovering something new, but rather of science catching up to and validating knowledge that already existed. The next time someone encounters a traditional practice that seems unusual or primitive, the Otjize story suggests we should pause before dismissing it. There may be sophisticated reasoning and accumulated empirical evidence behind practices that appear strange from an outside perspective. The challenge is approaching traditional knowledge with genuine curiosity and respect, rather than the assumption that modern, Western, laboratory-based science is the only legitimate form of knowledge production. The Himba were doing dermatological science long before the field formally existed, solving real problems with elegant solutions derived from careful observation of their environment. That deserves recognition and respect, not condescension. Anyway, I am curious about your thoughts on this. Were you surprised to learn that Otjize has been scientifically validated as an effective sunscreen and skincare product? What other traditional practices do you think might have functional benefits that science has not yet caught up to understanding? And how do we balance preserving traditional knowledge systems with the realities of modernization and global integration? Drop your reflections in the comments below. This has been a fascinating exploration of how beauty, culture, and science intersect in unexpected ways, and I appreciate you joining me for this journey into the world of the Himba and their remarkable red paste. Until next time, stay curious, stay open to learning from knowledge systems different from your own, and keep questioning the assumption that traditional automatically means less sophisticated.